Stomach. Stomach is also called the gaster or venter, from which we have the adjective gastric applied to structures related to the organ. Definition: stomach is a muscular bag forming the widest and most distensible part of the digestive tube. It is connected above to the lower end of the esophagus and below to the duodenum. It acts as a reservoir of the food and helps in digestion of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Location: stomach lies obliquely in the upper and left part of the abdomen, occupying the epigastric, umbilical, and left hypochondriac region. Most of it lies under cover of the left costal margin and the ribs. Location of the stomach: stomach lies obliquely in the upper and left part of the abdomen, occupying the epigastric, umbilical, and left hypochondriac regions. Most of it lies under cover of the left costal margin and the ribs. Shape and position. Shape of the stomach depends upon the degree of tone of its muscles and tone of muscles of the body. In normal active person, stomach, its shape is somewhat J shape. In thin, tall person, hyposthenic, its shape is J shape, while in broad, strong, and very active person, shape is horizontal. The shape of the stomach can be studied in the living by a radiographic examination after giving a barium meal. Size and capacity. The stomach is very distensible organ. It is about 25 centimeter long, and the mean capacity is 1 ounce 30 ml at birth, 1 liter 1000 ml at puberty, and 1.5 to 2 liters or more in adults. External features: stomach has two orifices or openings, two curvatures or borders, two surfaces, and two parts. Two orifices of the stomach. The cardiac orifice is joined by the lower end of the esophagus. It lies behind the left seventh costal cartilage, 2.5 centimeter from its junction with the sternum at the level of vertebra T11. There is a physiological evidence of the sphincteric action at the site, but a sphincter cannot be demonstrated anatomically. Pyloric orifice opens into the duodenum. In an empty stomach and in a supine position, it lies 1.2 centimeter to the right of median plane at the level of lower border of vertebra L1 or transpyloric plane. Its position is indicated on the surface of the stomach. By a circular groove, the pyloric constriction produced by the underlying pyloric sphincter or pyloric pylorus. The pylorus, which feels like a large firm nodule, by the prepyloric vein of Mayo, which lies in front of the constriction. Two curvatures. The lesser curvature is concave and forms the right border of the stomach. It provides attachment to the lesser omentum. The most dependent part of the curvature is marked by the angular notch or incisura angularis. The greater curvature is convex and forms the left border of the stomach. It provides attachment to the greater omentum, the gastrosplenic ligament, and the gastrophrenic ligament. At its upper end, the greater curvature presents the cardiac notch which separates it from the esophagus. It is 5 times longer than lesser curvature. Two surfaces of the stomach, the anterior or anterior superior surface faces forwards and upwards. The posterior or posterior inferior surface faces backwards and downwards. Two parts. Stomach is divided into two parts, cardiac and pyloric. By a line drawn towards and to the left from the cardiac end to the angular notch, lowest point is lesser curvature and the line is extended further to the greater curvature. The larger cardiac part is further subdivided into fundus and body. Smaller pyloric part is subdivided into pyloric anthem and pyloric canal. Cardiac part. The fundus of the stomach is upper convex dome-shaped part situated above horizontal line drawn at the level of the cardiac orifice. It is commonly distended with gas, which is seen clearly in radiographic examination under the left dome of the diaphragm. The body of the stomach lies between fundus and pyloric anthem. It can be distended enormously along the greater curvature. The gastric glands distributed in the fundus and body of stomach contain all three types of secretory cells, namely the mucus cells, the chief or zymogenic cells to secrete the digestive enzyme, parietal or oxyntic cell to secrete here. Pyloric part. Pyloric anthem is separated from the pyloric canal by an inconstant sulcus. Sulcus intermedius present on the greater curvature. It is about 7.5 centimeter long. The pyloric glands are the richest in mucus cells. Pyloric canal is about 2.5 centimeter long. It is narrow and tubular. At its right end, it terminates at the pylorus. Relations of stomach. Peritoneal relations. Stomach is lined by the peritoneum on both its surfaces. At the lesser curvature, the layers of peritoneum lining the anterior and posterior surfaces meet and become continuous with the lesser omentum. Along the greater part of the greater curvature, the two layers meet to form the greater omentum. Near the fundus, the two layers meet to form the gastrosplenic ligament. Near the cardiac end, the peritoneum on the posterior surface is reflected onto the diaphragm as the gastrophrenic ligament. Near the cardiac end, the peritoneum on the posterior surface is reflected onto the diaphragm as the gastrophrenic ligament. Cranial to this ligament, a small part of the posterior surface of the stomach is in direct contact with the diaphragm, that is left crus. This is the bare area of the stomach. The greater and lesser curvatures along the peritoneal reflections are also bare. Visceral relations. The anterior surface of the stomach is related to the liver, the diaphragm, and the anterior abdominal wall. The areas of the stomach related to these structures are shown in figure 19.8. The diaphragm separates the stomach from the left pleura, the pericardium, and the sixth to ninth ribs. The costal cartilages are separated from the stomach. Costal cartilages are separated from the stomach by transverse abdominis. Gastric nerves and vessels ramify and deep to the peritoneum. The space between the left costal margin and lower edge of left lung and stomach is known as Pabus space. Space between the left costal margin and lower edge of left lung and stomach is known as Prabhu's space. Normally on percussion, there is a resonant note over this space, but in splenomegaly or pleural effusion, a dull note is felt at this side. Posterior surface of the stomach is related to the structures forming the stomach bed, all of which are separated from the stomach by the cavity of the lesser sac. These structures are diaphragm, left kidney, left suprarenal gland, pancreas, transverse mesocolon, splenic flexure of the colon, splenic artery. Sometimes spleen is also included in the stomach bed, but it is separated from the stomach by the cavity of the greater sac and not of the lesser sac. Gastric nerves and vessels ramify deep to the peritoneum. Blood supply. The stomach is supplied along the lesser curvature by left gastric artery, a branch of the celiac trunk, and right gastric artery, a branch of the proper hepatic artery. The greater curvature is supplied by the right gastropiploic artery. The greater curvature supplied by the right gastroepiploic artery, a branch of the gastroduodenal, and the left gastroepiploic artery, a branch of the splenic artery. The greater curvature is supplied by the right gastroepiploic artery, a branch of the gastroduodenal, and the left gastroepiploic artery, a branch of the splenic artery. Fundus is supplied by 5 to 7 short gastric arteries, which are also branches of the splenic artery, that is figure 19.10. The veins of the stomach drain into the portal and superior mesenteric and splenic vein. Right and left gastric vein drains in the portal vein. Right gastroepiploic vein ends in superior mesenteric vein, while left gastroepiploic and short gastric veins terminate in splenic vein. Lymphatic drainage. The stomach can be divided into 4 lymphatic territories. The drainage of these areas as follows. Area that is upper part left 1/3 drains into the pancreatic splenic nodes lying along the splenic artery, that is on the back of the stomach. Lymph vessels from these nodes travel along the splenic artery to reach the celiac nodes. Area B, the right 2/3 of the drains into the left gastric nodes and lying along the artery of the same name. These nodes also drain the abdominal part of esophagus. Lymph from these nodes drains into the celiac nodes. Area C, that is the lower part of the left one, third, drain into the right gastroepiploic nodes that lie along the artery of the same name. Lymph vessels arising in these nodes drain into the subpyloric nodes, which lie in the angle between the first and second parts of the duodenum. From here, the lymph is drained further into the hepatic node that lie along the hepatic artery and finally into the celiac node. Lymph from area D, that is pyloric part, drains in different directions into the pyloric, hepatic, and left gastric nodes and passes from all these nodes to the celiac nodes. Note that lymph from all areas of the stomach ultimately reaches the celiac node. From here, it passes through the interstitial lymph trunk to reach the cisterna chyli. Nerve supply. The stomach is supplied sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. Sympathetic nerves are derived from T6 to T10 of the spinal cord via the greater splanchnic nerves, celiac, and hepatic plexus. They travel along the arteries supplying the stomach. These nerves are vasomotor, motor to the pyloric sphincter, but inhibitory to the rest of the gastric musculature. Chief pathway for pain sensation from the stomach. The parasympathetic nerves are derived from vagus nerve through the esophageal plexus and gastric nerves. The anterior gastric nerve, made up of 1 or 2 trunks, contain mainly the left vagal fiber, and the posterior gastric nerve, again made up of 1 to 2 trunks, contain mainly right vagal fibers. Anterior gastric nerve divides into a number of gastric branches for the anterior surface of the fundus and body of the stomach. Two pyloric branches, one for the pyloric antrum and another for the pylorus. Posterior gastric nerve divides into the posterior gastric nerve divides into smaller branches for the posterior surface of the fundus, the body, and the pyloric antrum. Larger celiac branches for the celiac plexus. Parasympathetic nerves are the motor and secretomotor to the stomach. The stimulation causes increased motility of the stomach and secretion of the gastric juice, rich in pepsin and HCl. These are inhibitory to the pyloric sphincter. Interior of the stomach. The stomach has to be opened to see its internal structure. Mucosa of an empty stomach is thrown into folds termed as gastric rugae. The rugae are longitudinal along the lesser curvature and may be irregular elsewhere. The rugae are flattened in a distended stomach. On the mucosal surface, there are numerous small depressions that can be seen with a hand lens. These are the gastric pits. The gastric glands open into these pits. The part of the lumen of the stomach that lies along the lesser curvature and has the longitudinal rugae is called the gastric canal or Magen's tracing. This canal allows the rapid passage of swallowed liquids along the lesser curvature directly to the lower part before it spreads to the other part of stomach. Thus, lesser curvature bear maximum insult of the swallowed liquids, which makes it vulnerable to peptic ulcer. Beware of your drinks. Submucous coat is made of connective tissue, arterioles, and nerve plexus. Muscle coat is arranged as under. Longitudinal fibers are most superficial, mainly along the curvature. Inner circular fibers encircle the body and are thickened at pylorus to form pyloric sphincter. The deepest layer consists of oblique fibers which loop over the cardiac notch. Some fibers, some fibers spread into the fundus and body of the stomach. Rest form a well-developed ridge on each side of the lesser curvature. These fibers on contraction form gastric canal. For the passage of fluid, serous coat consists of the peritoneal covering. Functions of stomach. The stomach acts as primarily as a reservoir of food. It also acts as a mixture of food. By its peristaltic movements, it softens and mixes the food with the gastric juice, and the gastric gland produce the gastric juice which contain enzymes that play an important role in the digestion of food. The gastric glands also produce hydrochloric acid, which destroys many organisms present in food and drink. The lining cells of the stomach produce abundant mucus, which protects the gastric mucosa against the corrosive action of hydrochloric acid. Some substances like alcohol, water, salt, and a few drugs are absorbed in the stomach. Stomach produces the intrinsic factor of calcium, which helps in the absorption of vitamin B12. Clinical anatomy. Gastric pain is felt in the epigastrium because the stomach is supplied from segments T6 to T9 of the spinal cord, which also supplies the upper part of the abdominal wall. Pain is produced by either spasm of muscle or by overdistension. Ulcer pain is attributed to local spasm due to irritation. Peptic ulcer can occur in the sites of pepsin and hydrochloric acid, namely the stomach, first part of the duodenum, lower end of esophagus, and Meckel's diverticulum. It is common in blood group O. Peptic ulcer can occur in the sites of pepsin and hydrochloric acid, namely the stomach, first part of the duodenum, lower end of the esophagus, and Meckel's diverticulum. It is common in blood group O. Gastric ulcer occurs typically along the lesser curvature. This is possibly due to the following peculiarities of the lesser curvature. It is homologous to the gastric true of ruminants. Mucosa is not freely movable over the muscular cord. Epithelium is comparatively thin. Blood supply is less abundant and there are fewer anastomoses. Nerve supply is more abundant. Large ganglia because of the gastric canal. It receives most of the insult from irritating drinks. Being shorter in length, the wave of contraction stays longer at a particular point. The standing wave of incisura. Helicobacter pylori infection is also an important causative factor. Gastric ulcers are common in people who are always in hurry, mostly worry about incidents and eat spicy curry. Gastric ulcer is notoriously resistant to healing and persists for years together, causing great degree of morbidity. To promote healing, the irritating effect of HCl can be minimized by antacids, partial gastrectomy or vagotomy. Gastric carcinoma is common and occurs along the greater curvature. On this account, the lymphatic drainage of the stomach assumes importance. Metastasis can occur through the thoracic duct to the left supraclavicular lymph node that is called Treusser sign. These lymph nodes called signal nodes. It is common in blood group A. Gastric carcinoma is common and occurs along the greater curvature. On this account, the lymphatic drainage of the stomach assumes importance. Metastasis can occur through the thoracic duct to the left supraclavicular lymph node. Treusser sign. These lymph nodes are called signal nodes. It is common in blood group A. Pyloric obstruction can be congenital or acquired. It causes visible paralysis, peristalsis in the epigastrium and vomiting after meals. Hyposthenic stomach is more prone for gastric ulcer, while hypersthenic stomach is prone to duodenal ulcer, short and broad.